Okay. Hashem Nasim Natzliach. Tonight, our goal is to finish volume 12. Baruch Hashem, we already did volumes 10, 11, and now we're finishing and reciting volume 12. I have here already the volume 13. Okay, brand new, hot off the press. Thank you, Malkiel, for getting us a discounted price. So he gave me the email when it was on sale. So we have it, and Baruch Hashem, the next group of shiurim, and the next volume is in Hilchot Brachot. So you have the Tilat Yadayim, Hamotzi, Pat Kisonin, so that's Mizonot. You have all these halachot that are coming up on Brachot Hashem in our next year. For this volume, there is one more shiur after the shiur that we have tonight, but we're not going to be doing it. It's Hilchot Tisha B'Av. So if we're going to have another Tisha B'Av, right? Mashiach doesn't come, we'll have another Tisha B'Av. Then at that time we'll look over this shiur, the last shiur. Okay. But until then, let's finish up where we held off last week. And last week we were dealing with what should a person learn, right? We dealt with the mitzvah you're having to learn, and to just review, there's a minimum everyone has to learn. That's saying Shema twice a day. And then there's another minimum how much you have to learn, how much you're capable of. Okay. And everyone's capability may be a little different. That's what we spoke about last week. Then we say if a person has a limited amount of time, what should he learn? So we had the Shach, we had the Taz, we had the Shulchan Aruch Harav, we had the Yalkut Yosef. Then everyone said the same thing. Then if you have a limited time to learn, you should be focusing your time at halachot, to know how to live like a Jew. Not Daf Yomi, not Mishnah Yomi, not Nach Yomi, not any other Yomi, but halacha Yomi. Okay? A constant review of halachot. Now, of course, you want to do Shnai Mikra, you want to do Chumash, you want to do all these things, and it's all good. You should do. But a person's focus should be in halacha. So we're going to pick up with that. Actually, if we can take a minute before we start 273, take a look back on page 272. This is back in the Shulchan Aruch Harav, right? Rabbi Shneir Zalman, the first Lubavitcher Rebbe, and he writes that you have to learn halacha. Why? If you look in the non-bolded part, let's start from them. Because you have to learn halacha. Why? Because not all the time can you ask a Talmud Chacham. Not always can you find a rabbi. Sometimes you're going to be stuck. What should I do? No one to ask. No one's around. Sometimes I ask, have a shayla. I ask Rabbi Chaimov or I ask Rabbi Shai Tahan, and I send them the question. Sometimes I know I'm going to have to wait a couple of hours. Sometimes I have to wait a couple of days till they get back. So what do you do in the meantime? Right? So you have to know some halachas. Then he says you also have to know. You don't know when you have to ask. The person doesn't know any. If you don't know some basic halacha, you don't even know there's a problem. You don't even know if some milk fell on the side of your pot. You're cooking a soup and milk fell and hit the side of the pot. If a person doesn't know halacha, he doesn't even know that's a problem. It's as if it went inside the pot. And depending if it went to the place where the contents are or the contents aren't, it can make the whole pot usher, make the whole soup not kosher. If you don't learn these halachas, you don't know nothing. You have to know all of Archaim, Kimat Kuloi, Umiyat Yeridei. You have to know at least a little bit of Yeridei, Hilchas Kashrus in Yeridei. Umaat Levin Ezer, V'Chosh Mishpat. He says you have to know a little bit of Ezer, V'Chosh Mishpat, a little bit of everything. Call Allah Chabru B'Tamo about Talmud Mifarshav, Maharash, the Beis Yosef Lepachas. He says at least you should know the Beit Yosef on every halacha. Lepachas minimum. You should always be studying them. When he says person has a good memory, he should learn all of the Torah Shabbat Peh, but he should review over and over again the halachot l'maaseh, halachot that are practical. That meaning you need to know the ones that really apply to you, right? And he says also you have to learn. That's the next part. So you have to learn Haggadah. You have to learn other things. You have to learn Musar, right? Someone once came to Yisrael Salanter and said, "I only have 5 minutes a day to learn. What should I learn?" Should I learn halacha or should I learn musar? Right, Yisrael Slanter is a big musar, a musarnik. So what do you think Yisrael Slanter said? Why? Yisrael Slanter said.
Then he's gonna realize how much time he has to actually learn.
Perfect. He said, if you learn Musar, you realize how much time you're wasting in the day. You realize how much time you have more to learn. So it's important to learn Musar. Important to learn all these things. But he says the main thing is to know what to do. So saying all this, here in the Tzurba, he brings the Mishnah Berurah. What happens to a person who, we've been talking about people who have 3 to 4 hours a day to learn. Maybe you have less than that. Mishnah Gemara Vaiskim Balibatim Shein Lom Gak Gimel the Al Shars Be Yom Lo Yom Du Gemara the Chud Ze Any Yotz El Tarach Shilmod Dafka Gam Sifrei Vaiskim Ko Echa Kefi Histato. So he says, Mishnah says, if you only have 3 or 4 hours a day, it's not enough to do Tanakh and Gemara. You have to know halachot. What about nowadays? Nowadays, where it'll be a luxury to have 3 or 4 hours a day to learn. Most people are working 10 hours a day, 12 hours a day. No, how long are you working a day? 15 hours he works here. Chaim works 15 hours a day. So 15 hours a day. Call it one. He has to provide for the family. What do you want to do? So what happens then? Source 29. He says there are very few Bali Batim. I didn't say 15 hours. You're the one who said 15 hours. Give them. People say people, they mean themselves. Oh. There are very few people who learn 3 or 4 hours a day. Very few Bali Batim, people who work, who learn 3 or 4 hours a day. Still, they're not exempt from learning all the Torah. Whatever time they should, they have to split it up. They should learn Tanakh, learn Mishnayot, learn Gemara every day, even the minimum time you have. So if you're working 15 hours, how many hours you have left to learn, right? So you have 9 hours. You see, he even knows because it's him, right? He has 9 hours left, right? So he sleeps. He sleeps for 5 hours, right? He eats for 1 hour. So he's down to 3 hours, 2 hours max, like 2 hours minimum. He has to split up that time in Tanakh, Mishnayos, Gemara, the Iker, and if Piskei Teshuvot says the Iker, Hazman Yasku B'Halachot Sheb'Chol Yom Leida Ech Litnaeg Al Pi Torah V'Limud Sifrei Musar. He says the Iker is to learn halachot, to know what to do, and Musar.
Basically, Chok Israel, basically speaking.
So we
that's what it's just saying. Open that book and just read like
yes,
2 pages and just go.
We have the Chok Israel, and that is the way it was made. And it has in it, right? It has in it the Parsha, it has in it the Nevi'im, it has in it Halachot, it has it Mishnayot, Gemara, Zohar. Yes, this is the ideal. Obviously, if you have the time and stuff to do that. Listening is also learning. If you're learning and understanding, it's why not? People learn in different ways. You know, people are listening, people listen by reading. Personally, I learn by reading more than by listening. No, but when I focus on my own, when I go to lectures and stuff like that, I'm not there completely. But when I have the book in front of me, I'm much more attuned to it. So every way you learn, it's fine. So here the Tzurba Rabbanon, they bring from one of the Mizrachnik Poiskim in Eretz Yisrael, Rav Yaakov Ariel, and someone asked him, they said, I only have an option to go to a shir once a week. Which shir should I go to? Should I go to Daf HaShavua? Should I go to the Parsha shir, Musa shir? So the Tzurba brings down, Im yesh mishu tzarech levchor rak shir echa b'shvua. So Yaakov Ariel answered, Abechir hanechonu ledati he shir shel Tzurba merabonon. You should go to the shir of Tzurba merabonon.
Sunday nights on Zoom.
Right, Sunday nights on Zoom. Sunday nights, wherever they have once a week. Now, what's the rationale for this? Okay, like I told you last week, Rav Yitzchak Yosef Shlita, Chief Rabbi of Eretz Yisrael, Rishon LeZion, at a recent Tzurba Siyum, he came and he said that the truth is that Tzurba makes a mahapacha shel mamash, makes people be able to understand halacha and actually do it the correct way, because it really breaks it down to them. Rav Mordechai Eliyahu was a big supporter of Tzurba Rabbana, right? This Rebbe Tzilon Lagazi's project of Tzurba Rabbana. Mordechai Eliyahu would say, he said, people wouldn't know what to do if not for the Tzurba Rabbana. You have it on video where he says this. So it's actually a really good way to learn halakha. It brings it from the sources. Now, obviously, it's not all comprehensive. It doesn't go through every source and doesn't go through every halacha, but a lot of the practical halachot it does go through, and it's something that's important to learn. So if someone has a different sefer that they want to learn, they're learning halachot, kol hakavod, as long as they're doing it on a daily or weekly basis. But definitely, Tzurba Rabbana is a great way of learning. You know, Rabbatai, you're already learning 10, 11, and 12. You're finishing sefer 12. You think it's a good way to learn? I personally like it. I really enjoy preparing the shir, saying the shir, and the way they put it together.
Are they planning on all the aspects of Orach Chaim? Are they planning to cover all of those halachot, or just the main?
Not every halacha, but the most practicals of each one. Yeah, the first 8 were Yoredeya, by the way. I think the first 8 or 7 were Yoredeya. So now we're doing Orach Chaim, and they'll do some Chosh Mishpah, and they'll do some Even Ezer also. Hashem. They think it's going to be about 30 volumes, might be a little more. So we're up to volume 13. We're going to start. 13, 14 probably going to be brachot, and then 15 or maybe 16 will start Shabbat. Shabbat will be at least a few halakim and a few volumes on Shabbat. So Zat Hashem, when we get there, we'll be there. All right, now comes the next part of the Tzurba Rabbanan. This is not in the Hebrew editions of the Tzurba. This is an edition of the English editors of the Tzurba Rabbanan. This has to do with a woman learning Torah. Okay, now I'm going to ask. We have here a very chashuv adam, very adam chashuv here. Yosef Chaim. Can a woman learn Torah? I'm going to start off with that question. You're very opinionated. No, can a person learn Torah? Can a woman learn Torah? So we're going to see that there are sources that seem to say a woman should not be learning Torah. But then there are also sources that seem to say that a woman should be learning Torah. Now, we know in history of Jewish history, we know that Miriam was a Nevi'ah, right? We know that Devorah was a Shofet and a Nevi'ah. We know that Sarah was very learned. We know that Esther was very learned. We know that there's biblical figures who are very learned, but we also know that there are Talmudical figures who are very learned. Right, Bruria, right, was a very learned woman. We have others, Shipcha, the maidservant of Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, right? She was also a very learned person. We have later in history, we have people who we had women, we have Rashi's daughters, right, that were very learned. There are many examples of women who Chana, right, the wife of Manoach, was very learned. The grandmother of the Maharsha used to teach halacha to students from behind the mechitza. Okay, the wife of Harav Isser Zalman Meltzer, she used to be the editor for her husband's works on the Rambam, so she must have known very well how to edit stuff. Okay. That's not entirely true. In our generation, we have very learned women. We have Rebbetzin Yemima Mizrahi. That's a very learned woman. You have Rebbetzin Michal Horowitz, who is a very huge person in Torah. We have Mrs. Shira Smiles, another very big one. There's a lot of people who are very learned in Torah. They say that what did I see here? When I saw it yesterday and I was preparing the shir, I took a picture of it. Very interesting. This is from Halacha Yomit online. This is the Chamavadji's Halachot that someone brought there. What did they say? Give me a second. Let me just find it. They said, the Maran Achida, he said that his wife, Rabbanit Rachel, that she was very brilliant in Torah. The wife of Rabbi Yaakov of Kurdistan, Rosh Yeshivat Mosul in Iraq, his wife would teach Torah to students also from behind the Mechitza. Like the Maharasha's grandmother, there was another person, another woman who used to teach men halacha from behind the Mechitza. Such as the mother of Harav HaGaon, Rabbi Yehuda Tzadka. Rabbi Yehuda Tzadka's mother used to come to Maran's shiurim, Chamavad's shiurim, and she used to argue with him in halakha during the shiur. So this is what they brought down here. It's not, I'm not. This is halakha yomit. You can find it online. They're bringing down. So there were many, very, very learned women. So
But
obviously,
this is like after, no? After they marry the kids or they have a lot of time to learn. Maybe in the 50s, maybe. No, that's older ladies, not like the young.
you're saying very good. You're saying somewhat similar to the Torah Tamima and to the Prisha and others. Let's take a look. Let's start. All right. Now we're going to start with the sources. Okay. So let's begin. Masechet Kedusha. Dav Chavtet Amud Bet. How do we know that a woman is not obligated in learning Torah? Right? Moshe Yosef Chaim, he says, women shouldn't learn Torah. They have to prepare the house. Right? He knows there's the Sinji Chone Zan. Right? The house is established by the woman. You can't. Right? It's not the woman. The woman got to go learn Daf Yomi every day. Who's going to take care of the kids? Right? So how do we know that they're not chayiv in Torah? The V'limatem, it says v'limatem, right? In Shema, v'limatem. You can read it instead of ve. You can read it ulmatem. Kol shemitzuva lilmoid mitzuva lilamed. Anyone who has a mitzvah to learn Torah is a mitzvah to teach Torah. Anyone who's not commanded to learn doesn't have to teach. How do you know that a woman doesn't have to teach herself Torah? How do we know others don't have to teach women? So this is how we know. Right? Benechem. What does Benechem mean? Your sons, Ben, right? Below Benotechem, and not your daughters. And this is where we know that we have no mitzvah to teach our daughters. Now, here it just seems to say that you're not mechuyev to teach your daughters. Doesn't seem to any problem to teach your daughters. Just you're not mitzvah. Right, you don't have to. That's what Masechet Kedushin seems to come out. And then what would be just like any other mitzvah? They're not mechuyev in tilat lulav and taking a lulav, but if they want, they could. They're not mitzvah to listen to shofar, but if they want, they could. So they're not mitzvah to learn Torah, but if they want, they could. That's what we would take out from this Masechet. However, to complicate matters, comes Masechet Sota. Page 276, source 32 in the Tzurba. It says, okay, talking about a Saita. What happens if a Sota, she drinks the waters and she doesn't die right away? But we all know that she did the sin. So what do we think? The waters weren't working? The Mishnah says, if she had some sort of zechut, it may not kill her right away. She has some mitzvot. She has some Torah or something like that. She drinks it. And since she has some zechutim, it doesn't kill her right away. Zechutim have to run out, and then she'll die. Like the Sha'im all the time you see walking around. Why are they still alive? They should be dead. But they have some zechutim, so they're alive. Right? Yesh zechut talat shana achat. Yesh zechut talat bet shanim. You have one zechut that can last 1 year. Another zechut that can last 2 years. Yesh zechut talat gimel shanim. You can't omer ben Azai. Therefore, Ben Azai says, Chayev Adam lilmod et bitot Torah. Ben Azai says, you're obligated to teach your daughter Torah. She'im tishteh teda shazchut Torah la. You know why? Because if they see a woman drink or they drink and they don't die, they might think the Torah is wrong. But if you teach them Torah, they'll understand the person has some sort of zechut, and that's the reason why they're not dying. So Ben Azai comes and says it's a chiyuv to teach your daughter's Torah, so they understand why a saita wouldn't die. Eliezer says, Eliezer, Kol Malhamid Bito Torah, Lomda, Tiflut. Right? Anyone who teaches Tiflut. Anyone who teaches his daughter Torah teaches her Tiflut. Now, what does Tiflut mean? No? How do you translate Tiflut? Promiscuity. Okay? That's the way Rashi understands Tiflut. Promiscuity means you're teaching her to act badly. Yes. So Eliezer says, the Gemara is going to ask this. The Gemara says, Tiflut salkadatach. You're teaching her how to be acting not right. Can be. It's as if you're teaching her tiflut. It's as if you're teaching her. All right, boy, my Talmud, the Rebbe Eliezer, the Chtiv, ani chokhma shechanti aroma, kivon shenichasa chokhma ba'adam nichlasa imo aromomit. Someone who Torah comes into him, he starts to able to do trickery. Right? What does that mean? Torah makes a person smart. If he doesn't use the Torah correctly, he'll start tricking everyone around him. You're very smart, right? Someone once said to me, when you call the yeshivas and you want to ask for a tuition discount, they ask you, you're working, just don't be at work at that time. And then you say, now I'm not working. So in this way, you're not lying, right? You don't get, no guy's going to cover this idea. Only he can cover this idea. Why? Because I'm not working now. It's right. Ani, Eso, all right. So you learn how to do this trickery. So now Baruch Hashem, and he's saying, men are learning more. They're davening. They're more connected. So somehow the Torah won't confuse them as much. As women, also you have to remember back in the day, women were not educated as they are today. Right? They were most illiterate. They were just at home. They didn't do anything. Just the way society was. So if you start teaching them some chokhmah, they're going to start using it the wrong way. So Rashi, and this is the way we're learning the Gemara, is the way Rashi understands the Gemara, that tiflut means promiscuity. You're teaching her how to act improperly, tricking her, trickery and stuff like that. Okay. Now trickery is one thing. That's the way the Gemara understands tiflut. But the word tiflut that Rashi translates as acting inappropriately. However, look at the Rambam, source 33. The Rambam understands the word tiflut differently. So this Rambam, by the way, this is what most poskim base their psak on teaching women Torah, allowed or not, based on this Rambam. So what do we have so far? We had a Gemara and Kedushin that seemed to say it's okay to teach women, you don't have to. And then Masechet Soita, Ben Azai said Chayev, and Eliezer said Aser because you're teaching her the wrong things. Okay, so now we have the Rambam. Isha Shalom the Torah Yesh Lo Schar. So Rambam starts off. A woman who learns Torah, she gets schar. Ish because she's not commanded. Man is commanded to learn Torah. We all know this. When you're commanded, you get more schar than when you're not commanded. Someone who has to do it, he gets more schar. Someone who doesn't have to, gets less schar. So that's the Rambam. First part of the Rambam, very simple. The Rambam says that a woman learns Torah, she gets schar, just not like a man. Now comes the Rambam, and he says, of Alpha Pishiyesh Schar, even though she does get schar for learning any Torah, Sivu Chachamim taught Shelo Yelamed Adam et Bito b'Torah. Men that you should not teach your daughter Torah. Mipnei, and this is the clincher right here. Mipnei Shiroi, because the majority of women during the Talmudical time, as well as during the Rambam's time, as well as most times until past maybe 100 years, right? All women should right now, ain't da'atem nechavenet lehatalmud lehitlamed vehein mitzuyet divrei Torah ledavar haboy. If I'm reading that correctly, lefi inayot da'atam. So the Rambam says because women, when you teach them Torah, they make it into idle matters. Idle matters means, okay, so I'll tell you. So sometimes I'm invited to, the idle means that they idle as in wasting time. Okay, so I tell you, sometimes I teach, I'm invited to go to Orot, is the organization, Ornatan's women's organization. So I give him to speak. So sometimes I come there and I start saying Yesod, something that's important to know. And then the girls take it and they just, they take it and they just spin it around to something else. It's just like, it goes and what I'm trying to say, everyone forgot about. And like I mentioned one word and they take it and they started, going with that. Right. So I think that's what you mean. They start making it idle matters. So you'll start talking about Yosef Tzaddik's Petonet Pasim. Oh, I once had a beautiful red dress. I think that's the way I understand the Rambam. But they make it idle matters. You tell them about a Petonet Pasim, you're trying to explain the significance behind it, and they start making it about Devar B'Tev. That's the way I understood the Rambam. So the Rambam doesn't say this because of promiscuity, that you're teaching her how to act improperly. He's saying that they don't know how to learn. And his lashon is mipnei sherov hanoshim, because the majority of the women can't sit and learn. So now he continues, and he says, Amru Chachamim, because of this, Amru Chachamim, Kol Melamed et Bita Torah, Kil Limda Tiflut, as if he taught her idle matters, according to the Rambam, according to Rashi, teaching her how to act inappropriately. Now he says, now the Rambam, the Gemara doesn't say it, the Mishnah doesn't say it. The Rambam now classifies when this is. The Medav Urim, when is this says? The Torah Shebal Peh. Torah Shebal Peh, that is causing tiflut. That's causing the problem. Of a Torah Shebichtav, you don't teach her right away in the first instance. It's not considered tiflut. So the Rambam says, very, very important thing. So this is where all the halachas come out from this Rambam. Everyone's going to be an offshoot of this Rambam some way. Okay? The Rambam says, woman learns, gets schar. Don't teach women because their minds are not settled. They're all over the place. Okay? But the only issue of teaching them is teaching them about Torah Shabbat Peh. That's the issue. Torah Shabbat, you can teach them, but you shouldn't. But you could. Okay? That's the Rambam. Now, before we move on from the Rambam, he doesn't bring here, but the Torah flips it around. The Torah says the opposite. The Torah says the issue is teaching them Torah Shabbat. That's the problem. The Torah Shabbat Peh, you're allowed to. So you have the Rambam saying one way, and you have the Torah saying the other way. Okay? But most poskim don't look at the Torah, and most poskim go with the Rambam. Okay? But just to know that there exists the Torah that says the opposite. All right, so that's the first thing. So we're coming out that, according to the Rambam...
So you said that you don't teach him anything, or you teach him everything?
It seems that you can teach them everything. And if you want to be machmir, teach them nothing. Right? So what do you do? Which way do you go? So now we're going to go to our halacha. Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch says, Nashim mivarechet birkat haTorah. Women have to say birkat haTorah in the morning, right? Girls say birkat haTorah. Take out a siddur Ba Yisrael, Sephardic one. It's very important to get Sephardic girls siddurim, because there's some berachot in the tefillah that they're not supposed to say Hashem's name in, because they're not. They don't have to say those brachot. It's important to get a Sephardic siddur to the girls so they daven regularly. Other brachot, it's important to get them siddur Ba Yisrael so they know what to pray. So now in there it says Birkat Torah regularly. So why are they saying Birkat Torah? Why are they saying Birkat Torah? Right? So the Bir Halacha says, Hatam dehechayevot lilmod hadinim shelahem, because they're chayav to learn the halachot that are applicable to them. Okay, so this is one of the first sources that they have to learn halachot that apply to them. So just offhand, what are some halachot that apply to them? So Mitzion said tzniut, brachot, kashrut. So you're talking about a couple of simanim in Yeridea, right? Surchala, Melicha, back in the day, Terumot. A lot of different halachot that they have to learn. Okay, so we have an halachic stance that they're supposed to learn. Okay, now the Bet HaLevi, he says as follows. The Bet HaLevi, this is Rabbi Soloveitchik, right? And he says, the Gam HaNoshim she'en mechayevet l'limud Torah, b'kol malkim mechayevet l'limud mitzvot hanogot lahem. They have to learn Torah that's applicable to them. Like Bet Yosef brings out from the Rekeach, the Mishum Hachi Mevorech Birkat Torah. That's why they say Birkat Torah. Emnom ba'anoshim yesh oid ma'ala achat al hanoshim. The men have one more thing up than the women. What? The noshim b'limudam enu mekayim et shum mitzvot asay. They're not mekayim any mitzvot asay. They're not doing any mitzvah by learning Torah. The women. Rak having movel l'kuyum mitzvot. It's as if they are preparing for a mitzvah. But instead the halimud etzlam having mevo lehatchilit shehu kiyum mitzvot v'lo havei tachlit be'atzmo. It's not its own tachlis. It's not its own for its own reason. Rather, it's learning it in order to know. Okay? But when men learn, the learning itself is also a mitzvah. So when women learn, there's no mitzvah in the learning. It's a mitzvah to know what they're learning so they can know how to apply it in their lives. So the Ramah also in your day in Hilchot Torah, chayevet ha'isha lilmod dinim hashaychim leisha, v'isha ein chayevet lilmod et bena Torah. A woman has to learn all halachot that apply to her, but she has no obligation to teach her son Torah. So far, the poskim all seem to agree that women have to know halachot. And they have to learn halachot in order to know what to do. No one seems to be arguing on this part. In order to know what to do, everyone seems to allow to learn. Now, to what extent? To what extent can they learn halakha? Now, he doesn't bring this here, but it is a machlokas poskim. To what extent? Chassidish poskim, right? The more in the Haredi Chassidish world, they'll say you have to teach the woman very simple. This is the halacha, and that's it. You don't teach them how to understand halacha, right? And the more in the center Haredi, as well as in the Mizrachnik and more YU and modern Orthodox, they would teach this how to go from source to final halacha. Like the Mordechai Eliyahu, we didn't get into learning Talmud yet, learning Gemara for ladies. But Mordechai Eliyahu was against ladies learning Gemara, but he did allow women to learn Gemaras that related to the halachot that they had to understand. So that much the Mordechai Eliyahu did let. Okay, from my research, that's what I saw. That he allowed them to learn Gemaras. And I remember when my sister was in seminary, in a very Haredi seminary in Borough Park, right? The Yaakov of Borough Park Seminary. She did come home with pages of Gemara, copies of pages of Gemara, and highlighted some lines where they were learning. So you'll see that even in most center Haredi yeshivas, the girls would get pages of Gemara and to learn certain sections, just to see that as they're preparing to learn. So again, I just wanted to bring that out. Everyone says they can learn halacha. How they can learn halacha is a machloket post. Okay. Again, in Satmar and these two places, they'll have a special sefer just for women exactly what to learn. So here, actually, in the Alpi Joseph, they have an interesting sefer here. Otzer dinim leisha v'labat. It's actually very comprehensive. There's a lot of footnotes on the bottom. So if this is for women, then this would be similar to where Mordechai Eliyahu was learning, that you can teach them the basics and the source and everything for them. Okay. Now, today, if you take a look at most Bet Yaakovs, right, in most girls' schools today, they're teaching a lot to the girls, right?
Packing them up.
You know, what's even more interesting is that girls come out with more halacha than boys do in yeshivot, in Ashkenazi yeshivot. And in Ashkenazi yeshivot, girls have come out with more halachot than the boys. The boys are so focused on Gemara that they don't even know what to do. Right? And it's not uncommon to find Rosh Yeshivot who don't know halacha. That's another side issue. But they're so focused on the learning of Pilpul that they're not quite focusing on halacha. Also, many boys come out of Ashkenazi yeshivas not knowing Tanakh. They don't know Torah Nevi'im Ketuvim. They don't know. They're just so focused on Gemara that they don't know Tanakh. They know basic Tanakh. No idea, right? That's where my Rosh Hashanah, Yisrael Reisman, Shlita was very encouraging the young boys to learn Navi every day. Learn a parak of Navi. You have to know Navi. How do you not know Tanakh? It's one of the 20. It's the first thing. It's Tanakh. Starts with that. They say Rav Shraga Five and the Lavich, every time he would come to a pasuk in the Gemara, he would take out the Navi or wherever it was and learn the whole parak to understand the context of the pasuk, where it's coming from, and then go back into the Gemara. So Tarvadas was known to focus on Navi also. We actually had classes in Navi in the yeshiva also, but still our main focus was in Gemara. So people may have picked up something from Navi, but not a lot. Anyway, let's take a look at the Siddur Tifilat Yisrael Shel Rav Shimshon Rafal Hirsch. And all of Navi? Shmuel. Okay, so you learn Shmuel B'in, so you can make a Shmuel alphabet. So you can make an actual seal with the Kaddish, everything. So would you say, I saw a Reisman, when Reisman made a seal on Navi, you would take the same hadron that we say for the Gemara and just take out where it says Tanoim U'Mamoraim and put their Nevi'im, put the word Nevi'im there. You can say the hadron like that, and then you say Kaddish. That's the way he would do it. I saw that myself, and I asked him about it also when I was in yeshiva. He said you can do that. Just pull out those words, and you can do it like that. Like if you do the Siyam and Mishnayot, it also takes away the words Amoraim and just leaves the Tanoim. So the same thing with this. You just take out Tanoim and you can use the words Nevi'im or Kedoshim or whatever it is. Anyway, he says, Nashim einan chayavot liyot lemdaniot. They don't have to be scholars. Liyot bikiyot b'midashrei halacha. Ki bezeh yasku beikar hanashim. He says they don't have to become scholars. Women don't have to become knowing everything. Now you remember, Shimshon Raphael Hirsch was living during the time of the Reform movement, right? He was the one who kept a group of German Jews Orthodox. If it wasn't Shimshon Raphael Hirsch, there would be no German Jews today that would still be Orthodox, right? The one last Orthodox community of Germany is the Frankfurt und Main or Kehila, right, which is now based in Washington Heights. It wasn't for him, there would be none left. Ulam hevnat hamikra v'ota yediyah hadrusha l'yirat Hashem hameviyah l'shmirat mitzvot kaftanit v'likamin hashalem he shayechet li'itzuv haruach v'halev shel benotenu b'diuk kimo shel habonim. He says, but to teach them what they need to know for their spirit and for their mind, to keep them Jewish, that's what you have to teach them. Okay? That's what Rav Shimshon Raphael Hirsch is saying. He says you have to teach them in order that they'll have fear of Hashem. You know, before, I know the Shirs makes a lot of history, but before Sar Shneir came around and made the Beit Yaakov movement, they started making girls go to school. The only schools were available were the Goyish schools. So what happened? You had Jewish girls who went to Goyish schools, and then you had the boys who went to yeshiva. So now you had a bunch of yeshiva boys looking for shidduchim. Did the girls want to marry these yeshiva boys? Most of them not. There became a big shidduch crisis throughout Poland, throughout all those countries, because you had a bunch of yeshiva boys, and all the girls who didn't want to marry yeshiva boys because they didn't have no common ground with them. Right? There were yechidim that did, you know, they had good parents, but other than that, most of it was not. So that's what Shimshon Raphael is already addressing. He's saying you have to have the boys and the girls an equal spirit and mind into serving a Kadosh Baruch Hu. They have to teach them. You have to teach them stuff in order they're going to be in the same mindset. The Rambam he wants to bring here. He wants to quote this part of the Rambam that we've mentioned before. Their minds are not settled. When you teach them Torah, their mind wanders, and therefore that's what we shouldn't teach them. So maybe today that doesn't apply, or if there's any exception, woman who, when their minds are settled, they could learn. That's one of the big heterim over here. Is if the woman shows herself to want to learn, that's already a reason not to stop her. Like we don't teach it, but if she's already leaving Rov Hanoshim and she's able to learn and understand, it's a whole different story. Right? And the Prisha, he says as follows. She goes out from the row. That's what the Rambam wrote. She'll get schar because she left the row. Then if she's learning Torah, she's not going to change it into idle matters. Right? The Rambam's whole issue with women learning Torah is they're going to change it to nonsense talk. But if they themselves are wanting to learn, they're not going to change it into nonsense talk. They can only start talking about the red dress when they don't want to really learn. But if they really want to focus, they'll focus. Okay? Because but a father shouldn't teach his daughter because the father doesn't know what's in his daughter's heart yet. Okay? Rabbi Shmuel Archivolti, 16th century, cited by the Torah Tamima, takes a similar approach. The women who want to learn, they should be encouraged. Since the woman is prepared to receive the bounty of wisdom, we are not concerned for that which the sages said is a teaching her tiflut, as one can distinguish that the sages only refer to a father teaching her when she is young. This is what Malkiel you were saying earlier. When she's older and she wants to learn, it's a different story. So the Torah Tamima actually says that after 12 years old, that's already okay to teach her. According to Torah Tamima, 12 years old is already when her mind is more settled. But the Malkiel wanted to say even when later, when they don't have the kids in the house anymore to raise and stuff like that, now they could become very serious. That's the same idea what he's saying. He says a certain time, their minds are not anymore wandering around, rather they're more settled. However, women whose hearts have steered them to draw near to the royal work, the work of God, based on their choosing, they will ascend the mountain of Hashem and dwell in his holy place. They are women of distinction. And that's, I think, what we've seen throughout history. There are always some women who were able to. We had the Maharsha's grandmother. We had this rabbi in Iraq that their wives and grandmothers were teaching halacha from the mechitza to the men. So there existed such things. Specific and special women who stand out in the crowd. So if they did that, it seems to be okay. Now, during the time of the Chafetz Chaim, this is where Sarah Schneer, who should be for a blessing, she came around and she wanted to make the Beit Yaakov movement. You should know when the Beit Yaakov movement started, there were many who were against it. Because, as we said, if you teach Torah to women, you teach them tiflut, and Rashi says that means teaching them how to act inappropriately. So there are many against it. But Sarah Schneer, who was encouraged by a Rav who said that if you're not going to teach the women, there's not going to be any Jews left in Europe because the girls are not marrying the Jewish boys. They want to marry the boys who they went to school with or whatever else they're influenced in. So you have to remember that at that time in history, girls were forced to go to school. Okay? Up until then, girls were always at home by their mother, by their father, little. They helped around the house, and then they got married at a young age, and they were out. As history changed, girls started going to school and stuff like that, and now they were learning things, and they're coming back with different ideas. So it makes sense, like we have today, to have a girls' school for girls, Jewish girls' school, so they can learn Torah. So they brought it to the Chafetz Chaim. What did the Chafetz Chaim say? All this that they said you can't learn Torah, teach Torah to women, was only in previous generations. Everyone lived by their father. Like it says, ask your father and he'll tell you. So a girl could just stay at home and watch her parents and know what to do. That was it. That was the education. But today, because there are many sins, their fathers don't even know what they're doing. And girls are not even living by their father. Recently, I was told as a single girl, not in the foreign community, someone outside I know from work, and she's a single girl, and she's like, that's it. I'm leaving my parents' house. I'm going to live in the single or modern Orthodox community in the West Side or whatever it is like that. Then it's so they're not staying home even. Right? They're moving out. And today they have to learn education. They have to go to school. Teach them Tanakh, teach them Musar, anything that has Musar in it, teach it to them. So they know what to do. They should remain in fearful of Hashem and Emunah. And if you don't teach them, you don't open a Jewish girls' school, you're not going to have any Jewish girls left. They're all going to leave because they're getting a different education. So the Chafetz Chaim, in his answering, he never talked about Torah Shabbal Peh. He talked about Musar. He talked about Tanakh. And he said, that's okay to teach them. Okay? He did not talk about teaching them Gemara. He didn't go there. He didn't go there at all. He didn't mention. So now the question is, how far can we take this Chafetz Chaim? Right? Chafetz Chaim said you could teach them, but how far does this go? So we're going to start off with the Piskei Teshuvot, and he's going with the Satmar Rav and Rav Shmuel Vosner, and these are, well, you can imagine these are the most of the Charedi, this is the most Charedi poskim you can get. So they are saying as follows: U'makom loy haTorah lamdam hakol. It's not from the Torah that you can teach them everything. Like don't take the Chafetz Chaim as saying everything's okay. He says the Torah is everything. It's eternity. If the Chazal said that it's tiflut, then it is tiflut, and it's in tiflut b'chol hadorot. This is very Haredi very strong. This is what they said. This is the way it is. There's no room for maneuver. Okay, and you can't teach them anything. Ela heter, and it's only a heter. Rak lamdam tnach mesechtas avos sifrei musar. Of a shard farm ain't shum heter. The gam oif limit tnach lo yem mefarshim. Shouldn't be no mefarshim. K'mo haramban. So most Litvish Cheder schools are not going with the Satmar Rav because they're all teaching the girls Ramban on Chumash. And according to the Satmar Shmuel Woisner, you should not be teaching the girls the Ramban. So most Litvish yeshivas are not going that way. The girls are not going the way. But even Ezra, the Gam Pirish Rashi Al Torah, Kumolov V'Kadosh B'Harbat Mekamis B'Dushas Like El Tzarech Lamdem Rak Shuton Shelha in Yonim in Missouri Chazal Chem Yoshim Shehem Nogim Lirat Shemayim Musar V'Tznius. So you have the Piskei Shirot bringing from Shmuel Wozner, Sechasad L'Brocha, and the Satmar Rav Izach L'Brocha, that you can only teach your girls basics, nothing more. No Ramban, no Ibn Ezra, nothing like that. Right. Now, like I said, most Beit Yaakovs are teaching Ramban, and they are teaching more stuff like that. So we'll move on. We'll go
That's
from
okay, right?
What?
That's okay.
According to everyone, that's okay. The most basic, no one's arguing with. But even in the interesting, they're saying it's Raka Heter. So they're not learning like the Rambam that says Roy Vanochim and all that. They seem to be taking it very literal. Now there are poskim that wonder why the Rambam chose to go with Rabbi Eliezer versus Ben Azai or versus Mesechtes Kedushin. That's another whole issue. We're not getting into that. Anyway, look at the Igros Moshe, source 44. Concerning schools for girls and young women, known as Bet Yaakov, and teachers wish to teach them Mishnayot. And we made a difference between Torah Shebechtav, Torah Shebal Peh. They should not be taught. They should not be taught Mishnayot. And therefore, one must prevent them from doing so. One should only teach them Perkei Avot. So the Igros Moshe says, L'chatchila, in the first instance, you should not teach them Torah Shebal Peh. If you did, he seems to be implying the B'di Avad would be okay. Right? That's very much about it. He says, L'chatchila, don't teach them. Now, Rabbi Eliezer Melamed, he is a Mizrachnik Poisik in Eretz Yisrael. He has a set of Svarim, Panini Halacha, which is I wouldn't recommend it for Psak Halacha, but if you're learning Halacha and you want to see different sources, it's a good reference safer. Panini Halacha. It's also, interestingly, if you ever want to source up a Halacha, his whole sefer is online and in English. So if you wanted, I can give you the link to it. He has his whole sefer online in English. You can buy this farm too, but if you wanted it online, you can get it also. So he kind of starts off and he says, although there's no mitzvah for engaging in studying Torah, like the Rambam wrote, right? It's because any woman who's interested in studying for Torah for the sake of heaven may do so, right? This is the Beit HaLevi, this is the Prisha, this is the Rambam Rav Anoshim, and she gets schar. And indeed, there were famous women who were known as Torah scholars. But for all other women, the Chol Shar Hanoshim she'ein lahem cheshik miyuchad lit'amek b'Torah, hadracha hakalit shel Chazal hi shelo lahamek b'pilpul hashitod elilma b'vehirot etzikum halachas ha'ma'asot b'tameh. He says, interesting. He says if they're not interested in learning, just teach them clear halacha, and that's it. Don't bother with them anymore. Let him be says emunah and musar, teach them emunah and musar, and simple.
With the system that
Right, but what is the system doing? Yeah, we have to know. So Rav Eliezer Melamed, interesting, says that, and it has a Mizrachnik question, because it's interesting that he brings it this way. He says you could teach them more, right? And he has a lot of sources to back him up on that. But he says if they're not interested in learning, don't teach them. Teach them basics. Seems to be a very, middle of the road approach. And now we're going to come to the most extreme of approaches as we're coming to the conclusion of this year. I do have more on this before we hang up, but we're now going to come to Harav Yosef Ber Soloveitchik. Yosef Ber Soloveitchik. He was the Rosh Yeshiva of Yeshiva University. Yeshiva's Rabbeinu Yitzchak Elchanan. Okay, he was one of the father of the modern Orthodox movement that we have today, the YU. But before you think that he was very, very left in his opinion in halacha, just know it's a matter of fact that my yeshiva Torah V'dat, wanted to hire Rav Yosef Ber Soloveitchik as Rosh Yeshiva. Okay, so he was very well known in the circles. He was actually part of a Agudas Yisrael for a while before he went over to the Mizrachnik side. He was a big Talmud Chacham. Torah V'dat wanted to hire him, but they had 3 conditions to hire him, and he didn't agree to one of the conditions, so he wasn't hired as Rosh Yeshiva in Torah V'dat, and that's how he ended up in Yeshiva Shabbat Yitzchak Elchanan. Okay, but no one argues in his greatness as a Talmud Chacham as well as a Paisik. But he did take a more left approach, a more open approach to teaching girls. So Rav Meir Twersky, who is his grandson, brings his grandfather's opinion. And the halacha prohibiting Torah study for women is not indiscriminate or all-encompassing. He says, it's not like the Haredi poskim that say everything's usher, teach them. No, that's not the way it works. Everyone agrees that a woman has to learn halachot. That was the Ramah. The Ramah, right? You had that in the beginning. Everyone learns they have to know halachot. This everyone agrees. Clearly, men are permitted to provide teaching to that. That's another whole issue. Can a man teach girls? Anyway, he says the prohibition of teaching oral Torah relates to optional study. If the girls just want to learn more, that's where the whole question is. Can you teach them or not? If they had to learn Gemara in order to learn their emunah, in order to learn the halachot, then they're allowed to learn it. That he agrees to also. He says, my grandfather he was more liberal than the Chafetz Chaim, and he allowed all this. The truth is that Rav Soloveitchik felt that girls who are going to college, right, and learning higher education, and this is another big caveat in this whole discussion here. The Lubavitch Rebbe also talked about this. Girls are going to higher education, right? They're going to college, they're becoming doctorates, PhDs. So why is their knowledge in Torah and halacha so basic? If they're showing the fact that they can go and get a doctorate, right? Why are they not learning more Torah? And therefore, they gave permission for that, right? In Lubavitch and in the modern Orthodox world, they gave permission for that. That the woman is already learning in college and higher education, that she shows she can handle it. And then it's incumbent, it becomes on her to learn more Torah. All right, so it's another aspect to look at. Rav Aaron Lichtenstein, who is now a son-in-law of Rav Soloveitchik, he also writes, to my mind, it's desirable and necessary, not only possible, to provide intensive education for women, even through the Talmud, even through Torah Sheba'al Peh. He says, women are engaged in all professions, and they're learning everything. Why should their Torah be restricted? Everything else they can learn, but Torah, no. It's just not right. They can learn everything. I'll just learn Torah too. He says, women today receive a broad general education, and many attend universities, and there as well as within society, they come into contact with diverse worldviews. He says they're going to go into their university and learn different things. If they don't know Torah strong, they're going to become confused. So you have to teach them Torah strong. They have to know what they're doing. You have to know how to answer. And he's going like the Beit HaLevi. The Beit HaLevi, see, if a woman needs anything in her life, she can learn that. And today she needs to learn Gemara. He says, I'm not opposed to teaching Talmud to women. And Lichtenstein seems to be taking the most open and liberal approach to this discussion. And the truth is, Rav Soloveitchik actually gave shir to girls in Talmud in YU, Stearns College, as well as he was a big proponent to teach in Maimonides girls' school in Baltimore, Talmud also to high school girls. So in YU, he gave it to the college girls, and Maimonides High School in Baltimore, he gave it to high school students. Here he gave it to college girl students. So what comes out in the end of the day, there are differences of opinions of how much and what can the girls learn. I don't think anyone argues that you have to teach them some basics. They have to know how to be Jewish, and they have to know halachot, right? The matter of halachot they have to learn is a lot. They have to know how to run a kosher kitchen. Running a kosher kitchen is already tons and tons of halachot. Now, how much in depth they can go, that's already a question. Some say just give them the clear psak, and some say you can teach them from the source. right? And we brought Ramor Cheliyahu said you can teach them from the source. So you have a Sephardic posik that said you're allowed to teach the girls from the Gemara halacha, but you can. But he did not go like Rav Lichtenstein and others to say you can teach straight Talmud to them, just Talmud for the halacha. So I want to just read from the Yalkut Yosef. It doesn't really clear it for us, but I just wanted to read his lashon anyway. Tafshin Nun. The Yalkut Yosef, he says as follows. Here we go. Anashim p'torot mitzvot Torah. They're potter from learning Torah, as it says, "V'lamatem otem et benechem, below et benotechem." Remember all that from the beginning. Ba'alfa pikein chayevet lilmod adinim mishaychim lehem. They have to learn the laws that is applicable to them. Shim loy tidenu halchot nida. They don't know halchot nida. How they keep nida? B'tfilah, to know hilchot of mikvah. They go into mikvah. Hilchot Shabbos. Have to know how to keep Shabbat. So make a list. Already up to three sections. Hilchot brachot, up to 4. Hilchot isser v'heter. They have to know what's kosher and what's not. Milicha, salting, basar b'challah, meat and milk, Tzurba, and anything like that. So if you think about it, the girls' curriculum could be huge. There's a lot of things they have to do. And even if they learn something that's not shaykh to them, yesh lo schar. She gets reward. So he says that as well. But not like a man. Because someone who is not commanded gets less schar. Then he says, we're not allowed to teach them Torah Shebal Peh, like the Rambam says. Anyone teaches the woman Torah Shebal Peh, they teach them Tiflut, because most women, their minds are not set, and they're going to make it into idle matters. When is this talking? Only about Torah Shebal Peh, but Torah Shebichtav, Tanakh, you don't teach them at first, but in Lamda, you teach them, it's not considered Tiflut. You're allowed to teach them today, 100%, even the Chatchila Torah Shevichtav. No one answers that. No one argues with that. And you're allowed to teach them Masari Chazal, Torah Shebal Peh. And you're allowed to teach them sections of Talmud and Torah Shebal Peh that is applicable to them. And similar to this. So, seeing from the Yalkut Yosef, he's not arguing with the Mordechai Eliyahu, and they're taking, I think, the most middle of the path stock on this issue. So they're not saying like Rav Wosner, and they're not saying like the Satmar Rav, but they didn't allow the girls to learn anything rather than just the basics. But rather he's saying they could learn everything that's shaykh to them. They do not seem to be permitting girls at random to learn Talmud, right? So this is now you understand the difference between modern Orthodox and Central Orthodox, right? So modern Orthodox would say today girls should be instructed in Talmud, right? And a lot of Talmud, modern Orthodox schools would have some instruction for girls in Talmud, and they have their poskim to rely on that. There's no real isser in that? No poskim would say there's an isser in that. They say something shouldn't be done. According to our poskim, from what we saw from the lashon of the Yalkut Yosef and from what I brought down from Mordechai Eliyahu, is that when needed, you can teach the girls Talmud. You can give them the page, but only when it's needed and only when it's necessary. Not they shouldn't give like Talmud 101 or something like that for them. And this is I think the major section of this. Any questions on this? Anyone have any questions on this? No. Pasha, we all have it. We already knew this. Yes,
not this. The last part, the Torah learning for men. They're working. They learn Tzurba Rabbanan. It has Gemara already.
Yes.
Some Mishnah Gemara, so it's already included, no, in the halachot itself learning. So does that count? Yes. It has to be like very.
It's counted in the sense that you're learning Gemara, but it's not Gemara learning. You understand the difference? It's counted as you're learning Gemara, but it's not considered Gemara learning.
No, Gemara learning is Siddur, Rabbi Yishmael says they did it for the purpose of.
That's right. It's already considered learning Gemara when you read those sections in the Tefillah. That's why they put it there. So I'm saying it is learning Gemara, but it's not considered Gemara learning. Because what does it mean, Gemara learning? When you learn, sit down and you take a Gemara and you learn it, it's piece by piece. You're putting things together, and you're coming out with a clear understanding. When you're learning it from when you're davening, or you're learning it from the Tzurba, he's taking a section and he's showing it to you.
It doesn't
That's
count.
how, by the way, that's the way that Tzurba does it. Would be permitted for girls to learn. According to Marcel, according to Chamavaji, everyone would say it's okay for girls to learn. To take a section of Talmud and show them that the halacha starts from here and builds up this way. That's what they're saying is okay. Like that type of thing. Now, interestingly enough, Rabbi Ari Leibowitz, Shlita, the Rav in North Woodmere, as well as the head of the Smicha program in Yeshivas Rabbeinu Yitzchak Elchanan, he brings that he saw, and apparently people know this, that Rebbetzin Kanevsky, so Reb Chaim Kanevsky's wife, Aliyah Shalom, she would give a bracha to a newborn girl, and she would say, Tiskeh LeTorah. That her bracha to a newborn girl would be Tiskeh LeTorah. And she should be zeichet to learn Torah. Because today girls learn Torah. So she would give a bracha as such. So you're talking about Reb Chaim Kanevsky. Now, how far what did she mean by that? Okay? Right? Now, while we're on this topic, what about, there's some schools, especially out of town, or even modern Orthodox schools in town, and they have mixed classes for boys and girls, right? I know in Yeshiva Flatbush, they told me, what did they tell me? 6th grade or 7th grade or something like that. They stopped the Hebrew part's not mixed anymore, and the English part is mixed still. There's certain schools that do these things. Is co-ed halachically permissible or not? Well, obviously, if you ask any Haredi place, it would be completely a problem. Out of town yeshivas have an issue. Okay, they might not have enough students. They may not have enough teachers. They may not be able to pay for teachers. They may not be able to pay for the classroom size. Right, I'm talking about small towns and need yeshiva and stuff like that. So there does seem to be some room for to allow mixed classes to a certain degree until a certain age. And the place can say another issue of a mixed class is that the girls and boys get too familiar with each other, and that's not something that we want. But if there is a need, younger grades could be somewhat mixed if there is a great need to that. There were those who agreed to that. Depending on the place. Everyone agrees nursery kids are okay. He brings here from Moshe Feinstein. Moshe Feinstein said even young kids should be taught separately. But if it's hard and they're very young, you could be lenient. And he said until age 9. But Moshe Feinstein would agree till age 9 that they can have a mixed class. A mixed class up till age 9 if necessary. Good. 9th would be 4th grade. 9th would be 4th grade. Yeah, 3rd, 4th, 5th. Yeah, 4th grade would be 9-year-old. Right, around down, right around then. So it would split it up. At that point, it should try to be separate. So there is room. So if you go to a different out of town and you see, the schools are mixed, you don't have to go crazy. This might be a reason why they do that. All right. Yeshivas here that do it are modern Orthodox yeshivas. So if you feel uncomfortable with that, you shouldn't be sending your kids there, because obviously that's not our Masorah. Our Masorah is not to have mixed classes. Okay, so yeah, YCQ is that way. I know YUF is that way. YCQ is also a modern Orthodox school. I don't know how. What? Even high school?
Then when I finished,
Hey, they didn't have it. I don't know. They didn't know. Whatever. Obviously, we're talking about cases where there's a need for it. Okay, what about men teaching women? So now that we said the woman can learn Torah Shabbat Peh,
That's a problem.
can men teach women? So there are poskim.
Agreed with that, Samna?
So many rabbis just talk the woman actually.
Right.
So there are poskim that say that a single man should definitely not teach girls. And this issue, especially if it's the kriyas, even if it's always going to be it's going to be a weekly thing or something that they're going to be seeing them very often, then it's definitely problematic for a single man to teach. But if it's not on a set schedule, meaning he's coming as a guest speaker, he's in and out, there seems to be room to make it like that. Some frown upon. He uses Rabbi Leibowitz uses the lashon frown upon even married men teaching girls over bat mitzvah. He says today the practice is that even rabbanim teach young girls. It seems to be accepted practice. Seems. He says one of the reasons why they allow men to teach because of teaching practical halacha, men are the ones that are usually more versed in practical halacha, right? And so they're the best ones to teach it. Theoretically, mechitza should be made between the teachers and the girls, right? However, this is not the custom, nor is it practical. So one of the things with girls I've seen when girls learn, they like to see the person who's teaching. It's very hard for them not to see, right? I mean, this is written before Zoom came out and became popular. Maybe he would write, if you have a Zoom option, that would be a better thing, right? To keep a distance. So I remember when we did a Tehillim program here on Shabbat, and Rabbi Yaakov Danyar was looking who's going to speak. I said, okay, I can speak once or twice. So he said, go ask your Rav. It'll be okay to speak to them on a more constant basis. So I did ask Rabbi Yigal Chaimov, and he said it's fine. Just you're right. He said, ask me if my wife is going to be there. I said yes. So he said it's fine. Just go in and give the class, and that's it. So there is room to make it. And I know you might have heard somewhere else something else, but halacha, right? Mikra hadin, there is room to make it. Is it okay to do? The kviyas on a constant basis is not. All right. There were many stories in Eretz Yisrael in certain seminaries where the teachers or the principals were being male, and they had to say they had stories and scandals and problems that came out. Okay. So it's something to stay away from if you can, and it shouldn't be something set. Baruch Hashem, like today, Baruch Hashem, there are many learned women out there. Like we mentioned, there's Rebbetzin Yemima Mizrahi and Shashira Smiles, Rebbetzin Michal Horowitz. There's many great scholars, womanly scholars, and they should be in charge, and they should be doing their thing, and they should be the ones running over the women. And then the men have to come in and give a shir. He comes in and gives a shir.
So when it's men and women in the lecture, half of side is men, half side women. There's no question on that, right? It's okay in any case.
To have such a share, it's okay to have such a share.
There's a mechitza, guys, ladies and men. It's okay, right? There's no question on that. I'm not talking about that.
Women in the same room.
Yes, but it's mechitza, like a lot of shurim out there.
You need a mechitza? That's another question. You probably don't, but if you have one, it's probably better. And yeah, there's no real problem to have it that way. If the woman if they have a balcony where the women usually stay on the second floor, it's better for them to stay on the other floor. They need to come down. They can come down. If they don't want the mechitza, they don't need to have the mechitza there. So why are you going to the lecture if you're going for machshavos? We have our in-house posek. Rosh Hashanah says you have to have mechitza all times. You should walk around with a mechitza with you just in case you have to sit down around some woman. Okay. Yosef Chaim of Lita.
No Talmudist posek. No Talmudist.
Okay. What about the other way around? What about women teaching men?
You see the facts. You see that some people.
What about women teaching men? He says this shouldn't be done because it becomes the issue of yichud. But if it's like in a school setting, it could technically be permissible for women to teach men. Again, it should only be done in a pressing situation. So if you see something that is not what you usually see, don't go all wild until you know what the Ikr Hadin is and why it's happening. Figure out what's going on before you start making judgment calls. Okay? What I would suggest you do if you ever go anywhere and you see such things going on, the first thing to know, that institution, what does it classify itself as? Okay? Do they classify themselves as conservative, reform, Orthodox? You have to figure that out first before you make any other conclusions. Okay. I would also suggest that before you get any sefer, any book, know who's publishing it and know who's the author and who's the publishing house, because you can have all sorts of books that are going out and all stuff like that. You have to be careful when it comes to these things. But again, this is the share Be'ez Hashem. Next week we do start volume 13, and primarily the sefer will be in Hilchot Brachot. Okay, so we haven't. It's here. So looking forward to that. Shavua Tov L'kulam, Chanukah Sameach. Make sure to have a donut according to our in-house Pesach. You have to have at least one donut once a night. Shavua Tov.
So thank you.
All the